The crack of a gunshot echoed through the dry Arizona air as Abigail Gentry ducked behind a cluster of barrels outside the general store in Red River. Her heart hammered against her ribs, the thin cotton of her once fine dress clinging to her sweat, soaked back as she struggled to catch her breath. She pressed a trembling hand against her mouth to stifle the sobs threatening to escape. Her father's men couldn't be far behind. The year was 1878, and Abigail had never imagined she'd find herself running for her life across the harsh western landscape. Just 3 weeks ago, she had been the cherished daughter of the wealthiest man in Denver. Now she was a fugitive, fleeing the wrath of the very man who had once doted on her. "Found something?" a gruff voice called from the street. "Nothing yet, but she can't have gone far," another answered. "Mr. Gentry wants her back dead or alive." The words sent ice through Abigail's veins. Her own father, willing to see her dead rather than allow her to defy him. She peered around the edge of the barrel, watching as 2 men in dusty black coats stalked the main street, hands hovering near their holsters. They were heading toward the saloon, which gave her precious minutes to move. Crouching low, Abigail darted behind the general store and into the narrow alley beyond. She needed to get out of town, but her horse had gone lame just outside Red River, forcing her to continue on foot. Exhaustion weighed on her like a physical burden, her legs trembling with each step. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Desperate, she spotted a small shed behind what appeared to be a blacksmith shop. Without hesitation, she yanked open the weathered door and slipped inside, pulling it closed behind her. The interior was dark and musty, smelling of leather, oil, and horses. As her eyes adjusted, she realized she wasn't alone. "Well now, what do we have here?" Abigail gasped, stumbling backward until her shoulders hit the rough wooden wall. A tall figure rose from where he'd been crouched in the corner, examining what looked like a saddle. The man stepped forward into a shaft of light streaming through a crack in the wall, revealing a young face weathered by sun and wind, with eyes as blue as a summer sky. "Please," Abigail whispered, "don't say anything. There are men looking for me." The stranger tilted his head, studying her with those piercing eyes. He couldn't have been more than 25, with sandy blonde hair falling across his forehead beneath a well-worn cowboy hat. His clothes were simple but clean denim pants, a faded red shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a leather vest. "Those would be the men I spotted riding into town about an hour ago," he said, his voice low and smooth with the hint of a drawl. "Nasty-looking bunch." Abigail nodded, straining to hear any sounds from outside. "My father sent them. He'll kill me if he finds me." The cowboy's expression darkened. He moved to the door and carefully peered through a crack. 2 men coming this way. They looked determined. Fear surged through Abigail, making her light-headed. She'd been running for days, sleeping in barns and eating whatever she could steal or purchase with the few coins she'd managed to take before fleeing. She was at the end of her strength, the end of her hope. The cowboy turned back to her, a decision forming in his eyes. "There's a trapdoor in the floor. My uncle keeps extra supplies down there." He quickly moved a crate, revealing a small wooden door set into the floorboards. "Get in, quick." Abigail didn't hesitate. She climbed down into the dark space as the cowboy replaced the crate. Just before he closed the trapdoor, he whispered, "Don't make a sound." In the darkness, Abigail hugged her knees to her chest, trying to control her breathing. She heard the shed door swing open and heavy footsteps enter. "Afternoon, gentlemen," came the cowboy's easy voice above her. "Something I can help you with?" "Looking for a woman," one of the men said. "Young, pretty, dark hair. Seen anyone like that?" "Can't say I have," the cowboy replied. "Been working on this saddle most of the day." "Why you looking for her?" "None of your business, boy. Just tell us if you see her." "Sure thing, though folks don't usually pass through here. This is just my uncle's storage shed." The floorboards creaked as the men moved around above her. Abigail held her breath. "What's in these crates?" One man demanded. "Leather tools, some supplies for the ranch. Feel free to look if you don't believe me." There was a long pause, and Abigail could feel her heart pounding so hard she was sure they must hear it. "We'll be around," the second man finally said. "Town this small, she can't hide for long." "Good luck with your search," the cowboy said pleasantly. The door closed and silence fell. Abigail remained still, uncertain if it was safe. After what felt like an eternity, the trapdoor opened and light flooded in. The cowboy's face appeared, concerned but reassuring. "They're gone for now, but they'll be back," he said, extending a hand to help her up. "I'm Yates Lawson, by the way." "Abigail Gentry," she replied, taking his offered hand. His palm was rough with calluses, but his grip was gentle. "Thank you for not turning me in. I don't make a habit of handing over women to men who look like they mean harm." Yates studied her face. "You're exhausted. When's the last time you had a proper meal or sleep?" Abigail tried to remember. 3 days, maybe. I've been running since Denver." Yates whistled low. "Denver to Red River on your own. That's no small feat for anyone, let alone a woman who looks like she's never had to rough it before." Despite everything, Abigail felt a flicker of indignation. "I've managed." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Clearly. But you can't stay in town. They'll find you eventually." "I don't have anywhere else to go," Abigail admitted. "My horse went lame about 5 miles back. I've been on foot since then." Yates considered this, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "My ranch is about 10 miles north of here. It's isolated, hard to find if you don't know the way." He looked her directly in the eyes. "He'll never find you there." The promise in those words made Abigail's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. After days of fear and desperation, the simple offer of safety felt like more than she deserved. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't know me. I could be running because I've done something terrible." "Have you?" "No," Abigail answered honestly. "My only crime was refusing to marry the man my father chose for me." Yates's expression softened. "That doesn't sound like something worth sending killers after. My father doesn't take defiance well, especially not from me. The man he wanted me to marry, Senator Howard, is 3 times my age and known for his cruelty to his previous wives. When I refused my father." She paused, the memory still raw. "He said I was dead to him, that I would marry Howard or I wouldn't live to see another season. And you believed him?" Abigail touched her cheek where a faded bruise still lingered. "I had reason to." Something dangerous flashed in Yates's eyes, but his voice remained calm. "Then it's settled. I'll take you to my ranch until we figure something out." He moved to the door. "Wait here. I need to get my horse and some supplies. I'll be back within the hour." "What if they come back while you're gone?" Yates pointed to the trapdoor. "Same hiding spot. There's a pistol in that box by the wall if you need it. You know how to use one." Abigail shook her head. "Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that." He paused, then removed his bandana and handed it to her. "Use this to tie up your hair and pull your hat low. If anyone looks in, they'll just see my apprentice working on the saddle." Before she could thank him again, he slipped out the door, leaving Abigail alone with her thoughts. She did as he suggested, tucking her long dark hair up and securing it with the bandana. The shed felt both safer and more dangerous now that she was alone. Safer, because she had a plan. More dangerous, because that plan depended entirely on a stranger's return. As promised, Yates returned within the hour. He entered the shed carrying a bundle of clothes and a canteen of water. "Put these on," he said, handing her the clothes. "Your dress stands out too much. We need to make you look like a ranch hand if we're going to get you out of town unnoticed." Abigail took the clothes, a pair of worn denims, a loose shirt, and a vest that would help conceal her figure. "Turn around," she instructed. Yates obliged with a slight smile, facing the wall while she changed. The clothes were too big, but with the belt cinched tight and the sleeves rolled up, they would do. "Ready," she said. When Yates turned back, something in his expression changed, a flicker of something that might have been appreciation before he cleared his throat. "Good. Now here's how we're going to do this. My horse is tied up behind the saloon. I'll go first and you follow at a distance. Keep your head down. Once we're both there, I'll help you up and we'll ride out like we're just heading back to the ranch for the day." The plan was simple but effective. With her hair hidden and wearing men's clothing, Abigail managed to cross the town unnoticed. Yates's horse was a magnificent chestnut stallion, strong enough to carry them both. He helped her mount before swinging up behind her, one arm securely around her waist as he took the reins with his other hand. "Hold on," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. They rode out of town at an unhurried pace, Yates nodding casually to the few people they passed. Abigail's entire body was tense, expecting at any moment to hear shouts of discovery, but none came. It wasn't until Red River was well behind them that she allowed herself to breathe normally again. The Arizona landscape stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving. The sun beat down mercilessly, but the steady movement of the horse beneath them and the solid presence of Yates at her back gave Abigail a sense of security she hadn't felt in weeks. "Thank you," she said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't helped me." "Don't thank me yet," Yates replied. "We've still got a ways to go, and your father's men might not give up so easily." "You don't know my father," Abigail said grimly. "Harrison Gentry doesn't stop until he gets what he wants." "Harrison Gentry," Yates's arm tightened slightly around her waist. "The railroad baron," Abigail nodded. "You've heard of him. Everyone west of the Mississippi has heard of Harrison Gentry. He's bought up half of Colorado and is working on the rest of the territories." Yates paused. "You're telling me that man is your father?" Unfortunately, Yates was quiet for a moment. "Well, that explains the hired guns. A man with that much money and power can afford to send an army after what he wants." "I'm sorry," Abigail said. "I should have told you." "If you want to turn back, no," Yates cut her off firmly. "I said I'd help you and I will. I just need to know what we're up against." He guided his horse up a rocky incline. "My ranch isn't much, but it's mine, free and clear. No one comes there unless I invite them." They rode in silence for a while, the rhythm of the horses' hooves and the vast open sky lulling Abigail into a state of exhausted semi-consciousness. She found herself leaning back against Yates's chest, her body relaxing despite her best efforts to stay alert. "Sleep if you need to," Yates said softly. "I've got you." Those simple words, "I've got you," were the last Abigail remembered before she surrendered to the exhaustion that had been her constant companion for days. She drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of the changing landscape, the shift from afternoon to evening, and always the steady heartbeat of the man behind her. When she fully awoke, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Ahead, nestled against the backdrop of rugged hills, stood a modest ranch house with a barn and corral nearby. "Welcome to the Lazy L," Yates said, a note of pride in his voice. "It's not much compared to what you're used to, but it's home." As they approached, Abigail could see that while the ranch was indeed modest, it was well maintained. The house was built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around the front. A windmill turned lazily beside a water tank, and a small garden plot stood to one side. Several horses grazed in the corral, lifting their heads curiously as they rode in. "It's beautiful," Abigail said sincerely. After the chaos and fear of the past weeks, the peaceful scene before her seemed like paradise. Yates brought his horse to a stop in front of the house and dismounted before helping Abigail down. Her legs were stiff and sore from the long ride, and she stumbled slightly as her feet hit the ground. Yates caught her arm, steadying her. "Easy there," he said. "Let's get you inside." The interior of the ranch house was simple but comfortable. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A hallway led to what Abigail presumed were bedrooms. Everything was neat and organized, surprising her slightly. She hadn't expected a bachelor cowboy to keep such a tidy home. "Are you hungry?" Yates asked, moving to light a lamp as the last rays of sunlight faded. "Starving," Abigail admitted, "but I don't want to be a burden." Yates chuckled. "It's no burden to feed a guest. Sit down and rest. I'll take care of the horse and then get us some supper." While Yates tended to his horse, Abigail sank into a chair by the fireplace, allowing herself to truly relax for the first time in days. The reality of her situation washed over her in waves. She was miles from everything she'd ever known, in the home of a man she'd just met, running from her own father. Yet somehow, in this moment, she felt safer than she had in years. When Yates returned, he moved efficiently around the kitchen, preparing a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits left over from morning. He set a plate before her and poured 2 cups of coffee. "It's not fancy," he apologized, "but it'll fill your belly." Abigail didn't hesitate. She ate with an enthusiasm that would have scandalized her former society friends, not caring about manners or appearance. The food was simple but delicious, especially after days of near starvation. "So," Yates said as they finished eating, "what's your plan? Beyond running, I mean." Abigail set down her empty cup, reality intruding on her moment of peace. "I don't have one. I just knew I had to get away. My father had already arranged everything. The wedding was set for next month. When I refused, he..." She trailed off, the memory still painful. He hurt you. Yates asked quietly. Abigail nodded. For the first time in my life, he'd always been stern, demanding, but never violent. That night, something changed in him. It was like looking at a stranger. She took a deep breath. I knew then that I had to leave. I took what money I could gather quickly, some jewelry I could sell, and left in the night. And he sent men after you, immediately. I've been running for 3 weeks, moving from town to town. Every time I think I've lost them, they appear again. She looked up at him. My father doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. He sees my defiance as a personal insult, one that must be answered. Yates considered this, his blue eyes thoughtful. Well, you're safe here for now. No one knows this place except for me and my ranch hand, Miguel, who's visiting family in Santa Fe for the next month. He stood, gathering their plates. You can have my bed, I'll take the spare room. I couldn't possibly. You can and you will, Yates said firmly. You've been through enough. A good night's sleep in a proper bed is the least you deserve. Too tired to argue, Abigail followed him to a small bedroom at the end of the hall. Like the rest of the house, it was simple but clean, a bed with a handmade quilt, a chest of drawers, and a small table with a basin for washing. There's a nightshirt in the top drawer if you want it, Yates said. Bathroom's out back, I'll show you in the morning. For tonight, there's a chamber pot under the bed. Abigail felt a blush creep up her cheeks at the mention of such private matters, but Yates spoke matter-of-factly without embarrassment. Thank you, she said. For everything? Yates nodded, his expression soft in the lamplight. Get some rest, Miss Gentry, you're safe here. As he closed the door behind him, Abigail whispered to the empty room, Abigail, please call me Abigail. She slept deeply that night, wrapped in the unfamiliar but comforting scent of Yates's bed. For the first time in weeks, she didn't wake at every sound, her heart racing with fear. Instead, she dreamed of open skies and a pair of blue eyes that promised safety. The morning brought a new reality. Abigail woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disorientation gripped her. This wasn't her room in Denver, nor any of the roadside inns she'd stayed in during her flight. Then memory returned, and with it, a strange sense of relief. She found a pitcher of fresh water on the dresser and used it to wash her face and hands before changing back into the clothes Yates had given her. Her own dress, torn and dirty from her journey, lay discarded in the corner. When she entered the main room, Yates was at the stove, his back to her. He'd already been out, his boots were dusty, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up to reveal muscled forearms tanned by the sun. Good morning, she said softly. He turned, a smile warming his features. Morning, was starting to think you might sleep the day away. He gestured to the table where a plate of bacon, eggs, and biscuits waited. Eat while it's hot. Abigail sat, suddenly ravenous again. Have you been up long? Since dawn, had chores to tend to. He poured her a cup of coffee and joined her at the table with his own plate. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in weeks, she admitted. Thank you. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Abigail found herself studying Yates when he wasn't looking, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the faint scar along his jawline, the strength in his hands as he handled his cup. He was handsome in a rugged, honest way that bore no resemblance to the polished gentleman of Denver society. So, Yates said, breaking into her thoughts, what skills do you have? The question caught her off guard. Skills for ranch life, he clarified. Can you cook, sew, garden? Abigail felt heat rise to her cheeks. Well, I can play the piano beautifully, and I speak French and Italian. I can dance and paint watercolors. She paused at Yates's expression, none of which is particularly useful here, I realize. To her surprise, he laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made something flutter in her chest. No, not particularly, but don't worry, you can learn. Learn ranch skills, Yates said, as if it were obvious. If you're staying here, you'll need to pull your weight. I can teach you. The idea of staying, of learning to live this completely different life, had never fully formed in Abigail's mind. She'd been so focused on running away that she hadn't thought about what came next. I can't impose on you indefinitely, she protested. Once I'm sure my father's men have moved on, and then what? Yates interrupted. Where will you go? What will you do? A woman alone in these territories with no skills and no protection won't last long. The harsh reality of his words stung, but Abigail couldn't deny their truth. What are you suggesting? Stay here. at least until you've learned enough to make your own way if that's what you want." He stood, carrying his empty plate to the basin. "You can help with the cooking, cleaning, maybe learn to tend the garden. In exchange, you have a safe place to stay." It was a generous offer, far more generous than she deserved from a stranger. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. Yates turned, leaning against the counter, his expression serious. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I know something about running from a past that won't let go." Before she could ask what he meant, he continued, "So do we have a deal?" Abigail considered her options, which were painfully few. She had limited funds, no practical skills, and no idea where to go next. The thought of leaving the safety of this ranch and the protection of this man made her stomach clench with fear. "Yes," she finally said, "we have a deal. I'll work hard, I promise." The smile that spread across Yates's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Good. We'll start with breakfast dishes, and then I'll show you around the ranch." The days that followed established a routine that Abigail found both challenging and strangely fulfilling. Yates was a patient teacher, showing her how to cook on a wood stove, tend the vegetable garden, and even milk the cow he kept for fresh dairy. He never laughed at her mistakes, though there were many, instead encouraging her to try again until she got it right. In return, Abigail threw herself into learning with the same determination that had carried her through her escape. She rose at dawn, worked until dusk, and fell into bed each night with aching muscles but a sense of accomplishment she'd never experienced in her previous life of leisure. As weeks passed, she found herself watching Yates when he didn't notice the way he moved with confidence around the animals, the gentleness in his hands when tending to an injured calf, the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. And sometimes she caught him watching her too, a warmth in his blue eyes that made her heart beat faster. They talked in the evenings, sitting on the porch as the sun set, sharing stories of their lives. Abigail told him about growing up in the shadow of her father's ambition, of losing her mother to influenza when she was 12, of the increasing pressure to make an advantageous marriage as she reached adulthood. Yates spoke of his own parents' deaths in a fire when he was 16, of working ranch jobs across the territories before saving enough to buy his own place 3 years ago. "It's not much compared to what you're used to," he said one evening, echoing his words from the day they'd arrived. "But it's mine. It's wonderful," Abigail replied sincerely. "There's something honest about this life. In Denver, everything felt like a performance: the right clothes, the right words, the right husband." She looked out at the sunset painting the distant mountains. "I never realized how suffocating it was until I left." Yates studied her profile in the fading light. "You've changed since you got here." "Have I? You're stronger, more sure of yourself." His voice softened. "And if you don't mind my saying, you're more beautiful for it." The compliment caught her off guard, warmth blooming in her chest and spreading to her cheeks. In that moment, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since the day he'd hidden her in his uncle's shed. Before either could speak again, the sound of approaching horses broke the peaceful evening. Yates was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. "Get inside," he ordered, his voice low and urgent. "Stay away from the windows." Fear, which had receded during her weeks at the ranch, came flooding back. Abigail hurried inside, her heart pounding as she peered through a crack in the curtains. 3 riders approached, none she recognized from her father's party in Red River, but that meant little. Harrison Gentry had resources to hire many men. Yates stood on the porch, his stance casual but alert as the riders drew near. Abigail could see him speaking with them, though she couldn't make out the words. One of the men pointed toward the house, and for a terrible moment she was certain they'd found her. Then, to her relief, Yates shook his head. The conversation continued for a few more minutes before the riders tipped their hats and turned their horses around, heading back the way they'd come. Yates remained on the porch until they were out of sight, then came inside, his expression grave. "Were they looking for me?" Abigail asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not specifically," Yates replied. "They're bounty hunters tracking a bank robber. But they mentioned that while they were in Tucson, they heard about a reward being offered for information on the whereabouts of Harrison Gentry's missing daughter." He met her eyes. $5,000, dead or alive. The amount stunned Abigail. It was a fortune enough to tempt anyone with information. "Did they recognize me?" No, they've never seen you. They just heard about the reward and are spreading the word, hoping to earn a finder's fee if someone else collects. Yates ran a hand through his hair. But it means your father hasn't given up, and $5,000 will have every desperate man in the territory looking for you. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long threatened to overwhelm her again. I should leave. I'm putting you in danger by staying here. No. Yates's response was immediate and firm. Running again won't solve anything. They'd catch you within days. He approached her, taking her trembling hands in his. We need a more permanent solution. What kind of solution could possibly work against my father's money and influence? Yates was quiet for a moment, still holding her hands. There's one way to legally put yourself beyond his reach. Abigail looked at him in confusion. How? Marriage. The word hung in the air between them. A woman's legal status passes from her father to her husband. If you were married, your father would have no legal claim over you. Abigail's breath caught. Are you proposing to me? A flush crept up Yates's neck, but his gaze remained steady. I'm offering a solution. We've grown fond of each other these past weeks. I respect you, and I believe you respect me. It wouldn't be a love match like in your novels, but it would be a partnership based on mutual regard. The practical nature of his offer shouldn't have hurt, yet somehow it did. In the weeks she'd spent at the ranch, Abigail had found herself falling for this quiet, honorable man who had risked everything to help her. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that he might feel the same. I see, she said, withdrawing her hands from his. A marriage of convenience. Something flickered in Yates's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or regret. I didn't mean no, you're right, Abigail cut him off. It's a practical solution, and I am grateful for the offer. She turned away, not wanting him to see the disappointment on her face. I should think about it. Of course, Yates said. Take all the time you need. The tension between them remained through a quiet dinner and an early retirement to their separate bedrooms. Alone, Abigail sat on the edge of her bed, considering Yates's proposal. It was practical. Yes, a way to secure her safety and freedom from her father's control. But was that enough reason to bind herself to another man when she'd risked everything to escape an unwanted marriage? The difference, of course, was Yates himself. Unlike Senator Howard, he was kind, respectful, and honest. He had never tried to control her or belittle her. Instead, he'd taught her, encouraged her, treated her as an equal partner in the running of the ranch. And if she were truly honest with herself, she had come to love him during these weeks together. But did he love her? Or was she merely a responsibility he'd taken on one he was too honorable to abandon? Sleep came fitfully that night, and Abigail rose at dawn feeling no closer to an answer. She found the house empty, a note on the table informing her that Yates had ridden out to check the north pasture and would return by midday. The solitude gave her time to think as she went about her morning chores. By mid-morning, she had settled into a rhythm kneading bread dough when the sound of approaching horses pulled her attention to the window. 3 riders, not Yates, but strangers, were approaching the house. Something about their purposeful advance sent a chill down her spine. Moving quickly, she wiped her hands on her apron and reached for the rifle Yates kept above the door, loading it the way he'd taught her. She positioned herself by the window, watching as the men dismounted. Their manner wasn't casual like the bounty hunters from the previous day. They moved with the confidence of men who knew exactly what they were looking for. Check the barn, one ordered. I'll take the house. Abigail's heart hammered against her ribs. These were her father's men, she was certain of it. With trembling hands, she raised the rifle as the lead man approached the porch. The knock, when it came, was forceful. Hello, the house. Anyone home? Abigail remained silent, the rifle aimed at the door. We know you're in there, Miss Gentry, the man called. Your father wants you to come home. No harm will come to you if you cooperate. The lie was so obvious it almost made her laugh. Her father had offered $5,000 for her return, dead or alive. There would be no warm homecoming. Miss Gentry, we don't want any trouble. Come out now and we'll escort you safely back to Denver. When she still didn't respond, the doorknob began to turn. Abigail steadied the rifle against her shoulder, finger hovering near the trigger as Yates had taught her. She wouldn't go back, not to her father, not to Senator Howard, not to the life that had suffocated her. The door swung open. The man stepped inside, his hand moving to his holster. Abigail's finger tightened on the trigger. "Stop right there," she commanded, her voice stronger than she expected. "I know how to use this." The man froze, assessing her, and the rifle pointed at his chest. His expression shifted from surprise to calculation. "Now, Miss Gentry, there's no need for that. Your father's worried sick about you." "My father wants me dead," Abigail replied coldly, "and you know it. That's why he's offering $5,000 for my return, dead or alive." The man's eyes narrowed. "You've put him through a lot of grief running off like you did." "Get out," Abigail said, adjusting her grip on the rifle. "Get out of this house and off this property." A smile spread across the man's face, not pleasant, but predatory. "I don't think so. You see, there's 3 of us and 1 of you. That rifle's only good for 1 shot, and then what will you do?" He took a step forward. "Be reasonable. You can't win this." The sound of a shotgun being cocked came from behind him. "She's not alone," Yates's voice was deadly calm, "and if you value your life, you'll do exactly as the lady says." The man stiffened, slowly raising his hands. Over his shoulder, Abigail could see Yates standing on the porch, shotgun aimed squarely at the intruder's back. "Call your friends," Yates ordered. "Tell them to come here. Now." The man complied, his voice tight with anger as he called to his companions. The other 2 men emerged from the barn, hands raised when they saw Yates's shotgun. "Here's what's going to happen," Yates said. "You're going to get on your horses and ride away. You're going to tell Harrison Gentry that his daughter is under my protection now. And if he sends anyone else after her, they won't be riding back at all." His voice hardened. "Do I make myself clear?" The lead man's face contorted with rage, but he nodded tightly. "This isn't over." "For your sake, it better be," Yates replied. He kept the shotgun trained on them as they mounted their horses and rode away, maintaining his position until they were out of sight. Only then did he lower the weapon and turn to Abigail, concern etching his features. "Are you all right?" The rifle suddenly felt impossibly heavy in her hands. Abigail set it down carefully, her legs threatening to give way beneath her. "You came back." "I saw them from the ridge," Yates explained, crossing to her in 2 quick strides. "I rode back as fast as I could." Without warning, Abigail threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. His arms came around her immediately, strong and secure, one hand cradling the back of her head. "I was so scared," she whispered. "Not of them, but of what would happen if they took me back." "I wouldn't have let that happen," Yates promised, his voice rough with emotion. "I will never let anyone hurt you, Abigail." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "You called me Abigail." A smile touched his lips. "It's your name, isn't it?" "Yes, but you've always called me Miss Gentry." "Well, I'm hoping that's about to change." His expression grew serious. "I did this all wrong yesterday, talking about marriage like it was just a practical arrangement." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, I've been falling in love with you since the moment you stood up in that trapdoor, covered in dust but determined to survive." Abigail's heart seemed to stop, then race forward. "You have," Yates nodded, his blue eyes never leaving hers. "I have. Every day I've watched you learn, adapt, face your fears. I've fallen a little deeper. I didn't say so yesterday because I was afraid of taking advantage of your situation. I wanted to give you a choice based on practicality, not emotion. And now I'm done being practical." His hand came up to cup her cheek. "I love you, Abigail Gentry. Not because you need protection, not because you've become a fine ranch hand, but because you're the bravest, most determined woman I've ever met. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life by your side." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not fear or sorrow. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've been fighting it, telling myself it was just gratitude, but it's so much more than that." Yates's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head until his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that took her breath away. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Is that a yes?" Yates asked, his voice husky. Abigail laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married 2 weeks later by the circuit preacher who visited Red River once a month. The ceremony was small, just the 2 of them, and a few of Yates's neighboring ranchers as witnesses. Abigail wore a simple blue dress that Yates had bought for her in town, and he wore the only suit he owned, slightly too tight across the shoulders. As they spoke their vows beneath the big oak tree behind the ranch house, Abigail felt not the trapped sensation she'd feared when facing marriage to Senator Howard, but a profound sense of freedom. This was her choice, her life, her love. They sent a copy of the marriage certificate to Harrison Gentry by registered mail. The message was clear. Abigail Lawson was no longer under her father's legal control. Whether he would accept that reality remained to be seen, but for now they had done all they could to secure their future together. That night, as they lay together in what was now their shared bedroom, Yates traced gentle patterns on Abigail's bare shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Abigail rolled onto her side to face him, taking in the beloved features of the man who had saved her in every way possible. "Happier than I ever thought possible. No regrets. About leaving your old life behind," she considered the question seriously. "I miss some things, books, music, certain comforts, but I've gained so much more." Her hand came up to rest against his cheek. "Freedom, purpose, love, I wouldn't trade those for all the pianos and silk dresses in Denver." Yates caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "I'll get you a piano one day and books. Whatever you miss, I'll find a way to bring it here." "The only thing I need is you," Abigail said truthfully. "Everything else is just decoration." 3 years later, Abigail sat on the porch of the expanded ranch house, watching as Yates taught their 2-year-old son, Henry, how to feed a bottle to an orphaned lamb. The boy's delighted giggles carried across the yard, making her smile as she rocked the cradle beside her, where their 3-month-old daughter, Elizabeth, slept peacefully. The lazy Elle had prospered under their joint care. With Abigail's head for business, a trait ironically inherited from her father and Yates's ranching skills, they had expanded their herd and their land. The house now boasted a small library and, yes, a piano that Yates had surprised her with on their first anniversary. Harrison Gentry had never come himself, though he had sent 2 more parties of men during that first year. Each had been turned away, the first by Yates and several neighboring ranchers who had rallied to their defense, the second by the territorial marshal, who had taken an interest in their case after Abigail detailed her father's threats on her life. Eventually, a letter had arrived not from her father, but from her aunt in Boston, informing her that Harrison had suffered a stroke. He was alive but significantly weakened, his empire now managed by his business partners. The hunt for his wayward daughter had been abandoned. The news had brought Abigail a complex mix of emotions: relief that the threat had passed, sadness for the father she had once loved, regret that reconciliation now seemed impossible. But as she watched her husband and son in the yard, those emotions settled into a gentle acceptance. The past was past. This was her life, now chosen freely, built with love, defended with courage. Yates looked up, catching her eye across the yard. His smile, still capable of making her heart skip after all this time, spread across his face as he hoisted Henry onto his shoulders and started toward the porch. "How are my girls?" he asked, climbing the steps to drop a kiss on Abigail's upturned face. "We're perfect," she replied, reaching up to take Henry's small hand. "Everything is perfect." And it was. Not because life on the ranch was easy, it wasn't, with its constant demands and occasional hardships, but because they faced each challenge together. The woman who had once hidden in fear had found not just safety but strength, not just shelter but home. Yates settled beside her on the porch swing, one arm around her shoulders, their son between them, their daughter sleeping nearby. As the Arizona sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues, Abigail thought of that day in Red River, of a trapdoor and a promise. "He'll never find you here." Yates had kept that promise. In his arms, in their home, in the life they had built together, she had found something her father, with all his wealth and power, could never take away: the freedom to love and be loved in return.